outstanding team there and is a wonderful leader in faith. Jimmy is the father of 3 children.
Thanks for calling my son Logan. It's actually Liam, but that's okay. Well, it's great to be up here, and it's going to be very difficult for me to kind of stay in this position. Being Italian, I have to move my hands, number one. Secondly, I like to travel across the platform. So if I do veer off, just keep me on track here. I might need your help. Now, shout out to all my Sacred Heart staff. I was told that I would be in trouble later. So I just want to give a little bit of family history before I kind of get a little into my faith story or testimony. I was born in Montreal to an Italian family. I have 2 older brothers. My oldest brother, his name is Donato, a very Italian name, and my middle brother is Antonio, and my mom called me Jimmy. I have no idea why. Talked to my mom about this many times, and there's no explanation, so I had to get to kind of the derivative of my name. So it's kind of James, but it's not on my birth certificate, which is Jacques, which is also Giacomo. So I can be called Giacomo also. I lived in Montreal for 18 years before I traveled to St. Catharines, Ontario, where I did some theology. And when I was up to that point, when I was 15, I just had this desire to know more about God. I was questioning things about life. What's my purpose? Generally, as you know, working with students, it's not typically the question a lot of students ask these days. But I was just in that area of my life where I questioned those things, along with my brothers. My parents, after a while, after about 6 months to a year, saw an incredible difference in our lives. And they literally were wondering what was happening with their kids. It's always a good thing. And my mom and dad, over the course of the year, saw something within us, and they wanted the same thing. And within a year or 2, all of my family very much focused in on faith. I've lived here in Ottawa for 15 years, and as was mentioned, I have a beautiful wife and a wonderful mother to 3 kids. Luca Ruggiero is my oldest, and my middle is Lexi, and my youngest is Liam. So 2 Liams, amazingly so. We're all big time Habs fans. I know that this weighs up tremendous. And I also told my family one day when we get to heaven, it's going to have to be Italian, the language is going to have to be kind of like what kind of thing. So in my faith journey, I've experienced some good things and some bad things, and we're all on a journey, and different things we walk through, we go through, can make and shape us for the person that we become and who we are, as many of you know. Roughly about 5 years ago, my family and I went through a very, very traumatic experience, and it's emotional for me to talk about it at times because it's hard sometimes. And so we were driving the car. I was the driver, and my son Luca was 2.5 at the time, and he was behind me and in his seat, and my wife was 8 months pregnant, and a young kid went through a red light and T-boned us. And when I look back, sometimes I'm still amazed how I've gotten to this point and where I'm still standing. And I thank God every day. But when that moment happened, a lot of things were going through my head. And my son got the brunt of the accident. And he was helicoptered to Chio while my wife and I were at the Queensway Carleton Hospital. And a lot of things were going through me, and I didn't know what to think. A great fighter in the midst of everything. And there was only one doctor, Dr. Zhao, at Chio, that was willing to touch my son and do surgery on his brain. And he had a traumatic brain injury. Luca was not supposed to live, he had no chance of living, and nobody was willing to touch him. So when we were asked the question, in a very fragile state, will you allow us, wouldn't anybody say yes to this job? The next few months were living a nightmare, to say the least. On day 4, I remember being alone in ICU because my son was in induced coma. And my wife and I, family, I was praying to God, and I said, God, I don't understand why this is happening. And why did my son have to get through? Why is he going through this? It's not fair. But I prayed to God, and I said, God, I need your help, I need your peace. And I remember this like yesterday. I still remember on that day 4, by myself, feeling this tremendous peace filling my soul. And I sensed that God was going to give him another opportunity. How it would look like, I had no idea. But I just felt this peace. And then on day 8 was a turning point in Luca's life. It was a Sunday morning. And I remember they called us in. It was the first time I went home that night. They called us and said, you need to come in at 3 o'clock. Luca is not going to make it. You have to be here. Bring your family, bring everyone. I remember we rushed to the hospital. My mother-in-law, my father helped us out. We got there, tears coming down our eyes, streaming, both my wife and I, not knowing what was going to happen. And it was 6 a.m. I had a fractured wrist, and I had my brother-in-law tell me, I asked my brother-in-law, can you write something on Facebook for me? Now, Facebook has its purposes, and in this case, was a tremendous tool. He wrote for me urgent prayer requests. Please pray for me. And it was 6 a.m. And all the churches, as I heard the stories unfold later, stopped. And lots of little kids prayed for little Luca. And my heart was just so touched. And I remember about 9:30, 10 o'clock, the radiologist came up to me and said, I need to talk to you. What had happened overnight is Luca's right lung collapsed. And when you're in induced coma, there's not much you have left to fight for. When you already have a very traumatic brain injury, you don't have a lot left. So anything else that comes up as a secondary injury is very difficult, especially being a young kid. But she came up to me and said, I need to talk to you. She showed me the x-ray. And she said, Jimmy, I don't understand it. I don't get it. Luca's right lung is perfectly clear. Isn't it? Once again, God gave him an opportunity. Not all stories end up that way. Sometimes they're more tragic. But in that moment, I understood, and even did a CTV interview on the power of prayer. When do you hear that very often? Not very often. And I really recognized that as things would unfold over the next several months, Luca was supposed to be in Chile for 1 year. He ended up being there for 8 months. It was a long time, and it was very, very challenging. And what they told us is that when he would get home, or be in a place, he'd be a lot better. And you know what? I had that hope. I had that hope. What did that term better mean? And you know what? You have these expectations. And I remember renting a place near in St. Catherine, not St. Catherine, but close to Chile, actually. And we had to rent because we couldn't travel. We were in Carleton Place at the time. And it was not getting better. Luca was screaming about 15 hours a day in excruciating pain. And my wife and I would have a very difficult time walking through a moment, a minute, an hour. It was a very, very, very challenging. We were angry, we were sad. We cried many, many tears during those days, weeks, months. But one thing I always held on to as a family is faith was huge as part of our life. It was our foundation. And if faith wasn't part of my foundation or my family's foundation, I don't believe I would be standing here today. Luca may not be able to speak, may not be able to eat as he's fed G-tube, but he's an incredible fighter. St. Luke's Catholic Elementary School is where he goes right now in the DE program, and I couldn't be more happier and proud to be part of a wonderful Catholic community who loves Luca. Amazing. As the weeks again unfolded, I started to recognize that what we go through, there's always a purpose. There's always a purpose for all of us here today. Luca would be in the hospital one day, he'd be standing there, sitting up, can't say a word, and Mom sits next to me, with her child here, wants to come and say hi to Luca after about a day. She stands by the bed, no faith, no community, nothing. Starts tears coming down her eyes saying, I don't understand it, but there's something about your son. I feel a presence of God that I cannot explain. And I tell you, stories were unfolding, more and more and more. Kids praying for Luca all over the world, from Korea, a young boy, 3 years old, has no idea who Luca is, tears coming down his eyes. I journeyed for 8 months every day giving updates where Luca was at and what to pray for. I never did that in my life. To keep people part of the story and the journey. Sacred Heart was a fabulous community. They supported me, welcomed me, they raised money, they raised support. There was even a local event that evening that a young man who knew me in a youth group while I started and ended up having 1,000 people show up. And they raised about $40,000 for us as a family for medical equipment. There was the firefighters, the paramedics, everybody you can think of that were part of the story were there. When you start to recognize that our story is greater in the sense that when we involve community, it's so much more powerful. You know, I could have easily sat back and stayed alone in this. And yes, my faith in Christ was a huge component. But having the community of people was so vital for not only for us to survive, but to flourish, to live, to enjoy life. We came to a point where life was not surviving, life was living. My wife and I wanted to have 3 kids, and after we had the situation, the last thought in our mind was having a 3rd child. But 2 years in, we said, why should we stop dreaming? And I have a 2-week-old now, Liam. It was a beautiful, wonderful gift from God, who I cherish with all my heart. Life is precious. Life is wonderful. And we need to make the most of everything we go through. Luca these days is a happy man. Young, full of energy, a fighter. So if I tell you some days I was crying all the time, wondering why he was going through all this pain. It's such a long story, I don't have time to share it. To where he's at today, where he's got so much life. So much life that I look to him as my strength. Who would think that? I said this to someone not long ago. I said, looking back almost 5 years ago, and I wouldn't say it 5 years ago, I truly believe that what happened for a reason. And now God has given me the opportunity to bless, to encourage people in their journey of wherever people are at. Whether you're going through something right now, or whether you've been through something, as the journey unfolds, it's a wonderful opportunity to do things. Faith and community. 2 wonderful things that we need to hold on to. Faith and community. Some people are dealt a deck of cards in their life, and I was dealt a deck of cards that I sure didn't like. But you know what? I don't look back and I don't say to myself, I wish things changed. There's a purpose in what we've been through as a family. And I plan to utilize what God has given me as a gift to help, to listen, to share about the story. God loves all of us. And I love that song with the choir. It's just so great. Once a person said to me a while back, how do you still believe in God after you've been through all that? And my response was, how could you not? How could you not? We all have a purpose. We all have a reason. This wonderful community of Catholic educators and support staff, all of this room, you guys are all wonderful, fabulous people, created in the image of God. And you are so precious, and you're so valuable that you can impact a community of people wherever you are at. And we've heard so many wonderful stories already about that impact you guys have made. And it's only going to continue. And I'm very, very proud to be part of an exceptional community, the Catholic Ottawa Catholic School. And so as from my journey to your journey, I love to hold our community in prayer, and I pray that the Lord would bless keep you safe, your families, during this Thanksgiving season. Thank you very much.